very much for joining us today on the program Healthy Living. I am Adesuwa Osa-Uwage. Everybody has been talking about a particular set of people that shouldn't marry. When you look at your genotype, if it does not match, churches would advise you not to get married. Doctors would advise you not to get married. Some people go into marriage without even knowing if their genotype matches or not. They just go into it, and then when they begin to produce children, that is when most of them will run to the hospital. Some would not even go to the hospital. They will be busy looking for who is disturbing their children with spiritual means. Do you know that it is dangerous, it is criminal for you who is AS to marry somebody who is? In case you don't know, you're going to bring children, you may likely bring children into the world to come and suffer. And if you go close to sufferers of sickle cell anemia, that is when you will know that these children, or some of them who are already adults, are going through a lot of pains, from different form of pains. They just come, unending pains, crucial pains that they go through. And in some quarters, we've been told that sickle cell has got no cure. How true this is, we have somebody in the studio who is going to tell us if stem cell transplant is a myth or a fact or a medical joke. If it is, he will tell us everything that we need to know. So join me, people, as I make welcome Professor Bazuwaye Nusa, consultant hematologist, stem cell transplantologist from the University of Benin. It's nice to have you join us today, Prof.
Thank you very much, Adesuwa.
Thank you. Professor, we're looking at sickle cell. Before we go to treatment, can you briefly give us a history of what sickle cell is all about? Those who suffer from sickle cell anemia, what is it?
Yeah, thank you. Sickle cell anemia, it's a genetic disease. It's one of the most common genetic diseases in the world. And Nigeria has the highest number of sickle cell disease in the world. About 2 to 3% of Nigerians, we know we have an average of about 200 million people, has a sickle cell disease. It tells you the enormosity of the disease. It's a genetic problem that is transferred from parents to offspring. You know, you need to have parents who are hemoglobin AS, both of them, and then they stand the chance of having 25% chance for each pregnancy to have a sickle cell disease child. Meaning, they could be unlucky. Those days, some people think that, oh, every 4 kids, you have one as a sickle cell. No, you could be unlucky. You could have 3 kids out of 4.
And
it's like, yes, they are sickle cell disease, like throwing a dice. You throw a dice, you can be lucky, you get 6. You throw again, you get 6. So you have about 25% chance of having a child that has sickle cell disease. So it's a genetic disease that affects the hemoglobin and makes the red blood cell in the blood to sickle, and then they have shortened lifespan. The normal red cell of somebody who has hemoglobin AA will live a lifespan of about 120 days. But for sickle cell disease, the hemoglobin, the red blood cell will only survive for 3 to 4 months, for 30 to 40 days.
30 to 40 days instead of 120.
Like 120 days. So it's a genetic disease where the hemoglobin, there's a biochemical problem. There are some, what we call a change in the arrangement of the amino acids, so that the glutamic acid that is in position 6, and this is medical
terms now. Okay.
So for that reason, it's something that we think wasn't there from the beginning. You know, there's what we call hypothesis. Nobody can really say when it started.
When it started.
But we believe strongly that because it's common in malaria endemic region, that most likely is nature's attempt to protect people who live in malaria endemic region. So the gene of some individuals have changed. So the hemoglobin is trying to adapt to the malaria endemic region. And that's why people who are hemoglobin AS tend to be more resistant to malaria than those who are hemoglobin AA. Okay, so it's an attempt by nature, in an attempt to protect the individuals living in malaria. So there's this change, and the change becomes something that you now transfer from parents to offspring. So that is generally and there are a lot of complications because these cells, normally the red blood cell, when it gets to a tiny vessel, is able to pass. We say it's malleable. But when you have a sickle cell disease, the red cell will become hardened, forms like a sickle, like the shape of what you used to pluck.
Like the seed.
Yes, all those cocoa, you know, those like half moon or something.
Yes.
And then it forms that shape and becomes solid, and it cannot go through tiny vessels. So it blocks those tiny vessels, and the organs after the tiny vessels suffer from pain, infection, and destruction. So those are the basic things that happen in a patient with sickle cell disease. Okay,
let's look at the symptoms, because some persons, you know, in this part of the world, we're quick to pointing fingers at some persons disturbing the other person spiritually. Yes. What are the symptoms?
Now, when you say people disturbing people spiritually, before the advent of medicine, you know, I mean, Orthodox, it was in 1910 actually that the first diagnosis of sickle cell was made.
It was made in 1910.
From a black person who was a medical student in the United States. So before then, and even up till now, we have several names for a sickle cell disease patient.
I can
and
imagine.
That's why, because an African person, if you cannot find a reason for why you have problems, you put it on somebody else. It's very easy to do that. You have an in-law that is ugly, and you say she's a witch, she's disturbing the child. So there's several names. Abiku, some people call it Abiku, some people call it Ogbanje, because they die when they are young, and then you have another child that has sickle cell again. So that child that died long ago is
back again.
So, and because they have the husband and wife, they are both heirs. So they tend to have this continuous repeated years. And then you keep putting fingers at a neighbor who has threatened you that you will see, I will deal with you. So those are some issues. And the features. Now, if you look at the sickle cell patients, you have what is called the sickle cell facie. That means what they look like that will make you remember them. You know, so they have, some of them are not as tall as their fellow age mates. So we have what they call stunted growth. You know, these things are more common those days, but with medical treatment improving, you sometimes see a sickle cell disease patient, you may not even recognize them. So they have, number one, they don't grow as much as their mates grow. And number two, some of them have tiny, long extremities. You know, because they have long fingers and they are also tiny. They are not as weighty as their mates. Then some of them have chronic ulcers in the legs. So you see them, they tie bandage, they tell you that this leg has been, this sore has been here for the past 5 years. You know, some of them have protruded tummy, especially the kids, because their spleen is large. And when their spleen is large, they go to several places, like some places in the Asian side where they do a lot of marks. The African believes in marks, so you see them, a lot of them who have been butchered. Incisions on their tummy. So they have a large tummy, and then their eyes are always yellow because the blood is always being broken down all the time. So that's what we call jaundice. So you see them with a lot of jaundice, and then you see some of them having other problems like bone pains all the time. And apart from all this, some of them can even have stroke. About 4% of adults can actually have stroke, like we have in hypertension. And almost as much as 10% of children with sickle cell disease can have stroke. So you see them presenting with stroke, with one leg, one hand, not able to move. And so they can actually have some of those features. And you see some of them, they can have stroke more than 2 times, and then they are completely paralyzed. They are bedridden. Some people have sickle cell disease children in their house that cannot come out because they are bedridden. They've had stroke on several occasions and they are completely paralyzed. So these are issues, and some of them are blind because blood vessels supplying to the eye is also obstructed. So anywhere you have blood vessels being obstructed, they have a lot of complications. So the complications is usually endless, and sometimes they have sudden deaths. We've had these stories of sickle cell patients who say he's been well for a long time. Suddenly, they rush the child to the hospital, the child is dead. So we also have incidents of sudden death. So the complications is enormous. And that's why we keep saying prevention is usually better than trying to cure this disease.
All right, doctor, it's been said that sickle cell does not have a cure. All you do is, if you're AS and your partner is AS, don't marry. But with recent happenings in the medical world, we've come to realize that you can actually treat sickle cell and the person will be healed and healthy. How true this is via stem cell transplant is what we want you to tell us today. Before you give us that answer, what is stem cell transplant?
Well, stem cell transplantation is a method in which initially it was called bone marrow transplantation.
Bone marrow transplantation.
That's because the stem cells that we're using, now the stem cell for the layperson is what we call the mother hen that produces the cells inside the marrow. So when they were only collecting the stem cells from the bone marrow,
okay,
so it was called bone marrow transplantation. But now we can collect stem cells not only from the bone marrow, we can collect it from, yes, from the cord blood, you know, the placenta that you throw away, you know, after delivery. There are stem cells inside, so we can collect stem cells from there.
So people should not throw away placenta anymore?
Well, if you want to use, yes. In developed countries now, people store the placenta. The cord blood.
Okay.
They freeze it. If you have a child, they take the cord blood, go and freeze it. And if your child needs stem cells for any reason, they can call back those stem cells.
Wow.
You know?
For how long have this been going on?
It's been on for a long time. In fact, currently in Nigeria, we are working with a group called CellGen. And we've been, those who want to freeze their cord blood, for example, can be, their cord blood can be taken to UK and frozen for 20 years. And if you want it to be frozen again, you apply for another.
You apply for 20 years.
So because we have stem cells from the cord blood and also from the peripheral blood, now we can give you drugs that will mobilize the stem cells from the bone marrow into the blood, and they will take it from the blood. Wow. So that is called stem cells, peripheral stem cells. So because we have stem cells from so many places, it's no longer called bone marrow transplantation, but stem cell transplantation. So what it involves is very simple. You have somebody who is ill, either has blood cancer or has sickle cell, and you want to change the blood manufacturing mother hen. So we destroy the mother hen of the patient. The sickle cell, for example, give stem cells. Okay. Yes, I'm using the word stem cell to make it very easy for the populace to hear that that stem cell is what we call, for the layman, the mother hen. It's inside the bone marrow. That's the one that continues to produce blood every day. So we will target that stem cell in the bone marrow. With drugs, we will destroy it in the patient. So we'll give you some drugs, the stem cell is destroyed in your marrow. Then we take stem cells from somebody who is a match to you. There's a test we call human lymphocyte antigen to make sure that it's a genetic match. And usually the siblings are better, you know. Okay, siblings are better. You can get the chance of having a match HLA sibling is higher than going outside. And good enough, we have families in Africa with many children. So you take that stem cells from the donor and then transplant it into the empty marrow of the patient. The marrow that have been destroyed. And then the new stem cell or the new mother hen will start producing its own kind. So if it is AA stem cell that we took, it will start producing its own. If it is AS, that is the stem cell we took, it will start producing. If the patient has cancer and we have used the new stem cells that doesn't have cancer, to start producing cells that doesn't have cancer. So that's why we use it to cure both sickle cell and cancer. Now, the first bone marrow transplant for sickle cell was done in 1984. Not too far off. And yes, and it was because as at that time, they were doing bone marrow transplant for blood cancer. But they had a child who had both blood cancer and had sickle cell. So while they tried to cure the blood cancer, the donor was AA. And we discovered that the AA also sorted out the patient's genotype while curing the cancer. And so it became a routine that we can actually use stem cells to cure sickle cell. And since then, thousands of stem cell transplants has been done for sickle cell. And what we're trying to say is that unlike before, where we believe that there's no cure for sickle cell, there is cure for sickle cell. And even the cure we're talking about is not far-fetched from us. Because in 2011, we had done the first bone marrow transplant in Benin City.
We're very much aware of that.
Yeah, so with that, it has been proven. And the children that we have done transplant for, between 2011 up to date, we have done a total of 9. And unlike those days too, we used to talk about you can't do transplant with AS. But science has improved, so we can do transplant with AS. Yes. And so out of the 9, 3 of them, their donors were AS. So they are currently AS. The ones that their donors are AA, they are currently AA. So once you have that engraftment and the new stem cell begins to produce new cells, then the person automatically has no more crisis, and all the sickle cell disease that the patient has is over.
Will be over.
Will be over. So stem cell transplantation is the only cure for sickle cell disease.
All right. As you're saying this, it sounds so sweet, so easy, so beautiful. How expensive is it? Is it very expensive? Is it affordable? Is it what the common man can afford? Because if you look at sickle cell, it's common among the poor, among those who are not so enlightened. Let's not use education now, because even some who are educated forget to go for blood tests when they want to get married. They are not so enlightened. They are just there. You see a woman, you see a man you like, you marry, and that ends it. And you start making children, and then you give birth to children with sickle cell disease, and you begin to have problems. How affordable is this test? Not necessarily mentioning figure. How affordable is it? Is it what the common man can afford? You have just told us the good news that you can get it here in Nigeria, even in our state, though in this Benin, it can be done perfectly. Of course, we saw one that you did. It was on TV. It made serious headlines. We were very proud, and we're still very proud now. So how affordable is this treatment?
Well, for an average Nigerian, in fact, one of the reasons why it was postulated that you cannot do transplant in developing countries is because of the funds it involves, the technique, the personnel, and even the equipment. So, on the average, what we are going to use to do a bone marrow transplant is still beyond the reach of most Nigerians. Because, I'll give you an example. When I do transplant in Nigeria, you have to take into consideration the cost for power. The cost for power, because
that's a huge problem.
The cost for power, because the patient stays in a room, what you call a transplant room, is a room that has everything that you have in the house, but there is no air entering into the place. It's like a box. It's a room, but a box. And
no air from the outside.
From the outside. It has to be protected from the outside. So you need to have power 24/7, and the patient will stay in that place for 2 to 3 months before the patient's immunity, the new stem cells begin to produce enough cells that will take over the immunity and protect the patient. So when you have such, what goes into power alone, in genetic power for those 2 to 3 months, is close to 3 million naira. So 3 million naira wasted for power on its own. And then you also have importation of drugs. We still do not manufacture any drug in Nigeria. So even if they tell you that the drug, one ampoule of a drug is $1,000, you discover that $1,000 is huge sum of money, because at the end of the day we do not manufacture any drugs. All the drugs are imported. So by the time you put the cost of importation and even the cost of power alone, before you start talking about personnel and this, then it becomes outrageous to the average Nigerian. But when you compare what happens worldwide, what we're doing here is still the cheapest in the world, because a place like the United States of America, an average transplant will cost close to $250,000. That is extremely, and it's not because it's within the reach of the Americans, but because they have health insurance program. So the health insurance is able to cover for things like that. So we still perform stem cell transplant as one of the cheapest in the world, because you don't need to take flights to the place, you don't need to stay abroad for 6 months. Yes, you don't need to stay in a hotel. It's done here. By the time you remove power and then the cost for drugs, at the end of the day, is still affordable by some few Nigerians, but majority of Nigerians cannot afford it. And that's where we want the intervention of government. I will give you an example. I'm the secretary to the African Transplant Society. When we meet globally, Algeria, for example, the government in Algeria pays for all transplants, all, whether sickle cell, blood cancer,
whatever transplant.
Yes. In Brazil, the government pays for sickle cell alone, free for sickle cell disease. So these are government intervention. And I don't think Nigeria is that too poor to take some initiative. There's nothing wrong with the wives of all the governors in the states deciding to sponsor 2 or 3 transplants in a year. And that will go a long way. And then there's nothing wrong with NGOs. I also comment Dangote. Dangote sponsored one of our patients, because the person is from the north and he was able to reach. So these are what we're talking about, so that we can be able to help these individuals who require transplant. On the average, it's still beyond the reach of
the common Nigerian man. All right, the program is Healthy Living, and we're looking at stem cell transplantation cure for sickle cell anemia. And doctor has been doing wonderful here, telling us all that we need to know. If you want to give him a call to clear some gray areas, please do that on 052-290-573. You want to clear some gray areas, maybe you don't understand what he's saying, you want to ask your question. I may not ask the question that you would have in your mind to ask Professor Bazwaye. So please call him on 052-290-573 and they will answer your call and give you an answer to your question. Now, what are the side effects of stem cell transplantation? Are there side effects?
Yes. Even when you're going for as simple as appendectomy,
yeah,
it still has problems. And as simple as paracetamol, everything has its own side effect. Now, even in the best centers of the world, you still have about 5% mortality, meaning the chances that you are going to have complications, the individual is on his own reacting to certain things that are not within the control of anybody, you know. But we have been lucky. But in the past, it used to be as high as 20%, but medicine has improved to the extent that it's as low as 5%, which is still, well, big enough. But we have been lucky. We have done 9 transplants in Nigeria, in Benin City, and the 9 of them are all alive. So we've had 100% disease-free. We also had 100% overall survival. So that's one very huge complications that may occur. The second thing is that sometimes you may have what we call a graft versus host disease. That means the individual is trying to reject the donor. You know, for some reasons, the individual may not just want to accept. And so you have some reactions which we also control with drugs. Then thirdly, you can also have a rejection. So, no matter what you do, the individual, for so many reasons, individual reasons, will just refuse. So you have about 20% chance of a rejection. So during a rejection, what happens to the patient? Most times, in the past, if you have a rejection, the marrow is empty. You have a problem with that. So the new method is that we don't actually destroy the marrow completely. So we leave some small parts. Okay. And so that when you have a failure, that part grows back and then regenerates to become SS. Okay. And then you are still alive. You're still alive. But if the graft is, if the cells are properly engrafted, they cover the marrow, and then you are well. So rejection is one other thing. Then number 3, infertility. You know, those days, in the past 10 years ago, we used to use heavy drugs to destroy the mother hen or the stem cell. And that will make the person infertile completely. You know, those days. But medicine has improved. So what we use now is reduced intensity conditioning. That means we do not use heavy dose drugs. So we give you some amount of drugs that is not heavy enough to destroy the spermatozoa and the eggs. And so for that reason, this new method, you know, you have a higher chance of having fertility. In fact, when we met in Geneva in 2017, we had looked at all the patients that were transplanted, and we discovered that some of them are actually having kids after transplant. So this new method still protects fertility. So these are, you know, basic complications that usually occur when you do transplants. Okay, you did tell us that after transplant, the person may have to be under your care or in that special room for 2 to 3 months. What happens if that person does not recover within that 2 to 3 months? If the person stays longer than that period? So from what I quoted, that's the average stay. You know, when you say average stay, we've had patients who were very good. In 1.5 months, their cells have recuperated, and so we discharge them home. So there are some 2 months, there are some 2.5 months, there are some who may be refractory. I mean, we are still trying to suppress the marrow, and then the cells are not properly grown up, so they can stay for 3, so maybe some up to 4 months. But on the average, we're talking about 2 to 3 months, where we expect the cells would have recovered enough. And even when they discharge them, they are not supposed to start going to markets, schools. They stay at home for some time, and they will have to do another immunization within 1 year. So we tell the kids, they go through another immunization, because the new cells that is in them has no memory of the new body that is being put into. So you need to give them a new memory by giving them a new immunization to protect them against infection. So, you know, when you do kidney transplant, you take drugs for life. But when you do bone marrow transplant, you take drugs for only 1 year. After that, we do immunization for you, and that's the end. Yes. And this treatment is for both adults and children? Now, does it have age limit? Yes. Also, science has improved. Before, we used to talk about transplant can only be done for those who are 15, 16 years and below. And then, but medicine has improved now. So you have methods that can even do transplant for those as old as 40, so 20 to 40. So we in Nigeria, for example, we are still doing below 16, 17. But the last patient we did, that we discharged about a week ago, was a 19-year-old boy. That's the oldest that we have done. Full engraftment, he's now AA, he's been discharged home. But there's a new method also for the very elderly patients, those above 20. And that method is what we're going to start very soon for adult sickle cell disease patients.
Okay, you have not tried it at all?
No, it's a new method, as I said. But we're in Benin now, we've done children even as high as 19. So the newer method, which I told you is just out, can be done for those who are up to 40, 45. So that method is available, and very soon we'll start doing for adult sickle cell disease patients between 20 and 45.
All right, we're talking with Professor Bazwaye Nosa, and we're looking at stem cell transplantation. You have any question, call the number 052290573. But before, okay, a call is coming. Let's just quickly pick this call now. I was actually going to take a break because the Easter, but it's just on Sunday here. We need you to attend, to come and unwind. Hello, caller. Good afternoon. Hello, caller. Good afternoon. Please tell us your name and ask your question. Yes, I can hear you. Tell us your name, please. Hello? Okay, Anthony. All right. So ask Prof your question.
I want to ask the doctor his contact. I work with the studies organization. Not only I'm a member, just I work with Red Cross, Rotary, Lions.
Anthony,
so
I honestly,
want to
Anthony,
get some assistance to people.
All right, Anthony, do me a favor. Reduce the audio level on your television set because we are in the studio. We will not hear you. Reduce the audio level on your television set and ask the question again, please.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but the audio level on your TV set is too loud.
Okay, but can you hear me now?
Okay, better.
I would like to know if I can reach the doctor. So, in case we may want to put up some, like he talked about, first, does NHIS work with the system?
We're finding it so difficult. We're finding it so difficult to hear you. Maybe you would, maybe you would cut this call and call us again. I honestly cannot hear a thing. I will give you his contact later. Just wait till the end of the program. You get a contact. You get a contact to reach him. But please, people, you want to call, reduce the audio level on your television set. If you don't, we will not hear you in the studio. We will not hear you at all. Hello, caller. Good afternoon. Hello, caller. All right, if you do not reduce the audio level on your television set, there is no way we can hear you. The prof cannot hear you, neither can I hear you. Hello, caller. Hello? Hello? Yeah, how are you?
Fine.
Okay, tell us your name and ask your question.
Okay.
Hello? Just reduce the audio level on your television set and then call Prof. He would give you an answer. Hello, caller. Hello? 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 Okay, good afternoon. What's your name, please? Okay, ask your question, please. Hello? All right, we seem to be having problems with our telephone this afternoon. What you will do is this. You either move away completely from where your television set is, or you reduce the audio level, or switch off your television set. I think that would be better, because some people will want to talk and as well hear their voices coming out of their television set, and then it disturbs us in the studio. We will not be able to hear you. Good afternoon, caller. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please tell us your name and ask your question.
Okay, this Barrister Olani Esquire.
Oh, nice to have you on the program.
Please, I want to confirm that because the doctors, the proof said that from very soon they will start that of 20 upward. When will that start?
Okay, you want to know when that will happen?
Yes.
All right, doctor. The barrister wants to know when it will happen for treatment for people who are older than 20 and above.
Yes, as I said, barrister, currently we are recruiting those who are adults who want transplants because the procedure, as I mentioned, is ongoing. It's a new method. Some patients were done in the United States and some other centers. It's been perfected, and I am sure that very soon what we're actually waiting for is to have a center in Nigeria where they can do radiotherapy of total body radiation. Okay. So I'm in contact with the various centers. We don't use chemotherapy for adults. We use radiotherapy and then give some immune modulating drugs just to destabilize the bone marrow a little so that it will enable us put in the cells. So once we have a center in Nigeria where they can do total body radiation, just small dose of total body radiation, we give the immune stimulating drugs and we do the transplant. So I'm in contact with many of the radiologists in Nigeria. Once we have a center that can perfect the use of, the only center that can do total body radiation is in Ghana, and we cannot be sending our patients to Ghana. So if we have a center and they're able to start doing that total body radiation this year, we already have some adults who are willing to have the transplant.
Hopefully, where are we looking at? Uniben?
Well, any center in Nigeria that can do that total body radiation will be willing to cooperate with them, collaborate with them to see how they can help us do the total body radiation. We have a radiotherapy center in UBTH. Once that is also reactivated, that means we could also use the center. So, but that is what is the drawback for us not doing transplant for adult sickle cell now. Okay. The use of total body radiation. And once we get that done, and that's why we're talking about government being proactive. These are things that are available in most countries. And then the radiologists must be able to have machines to be able to do total body radiation. And once we're able to do that, we start doing for adult transplant.
You know, like in some other transplant, like kidney transplant, heart transplant and all that, the person gets healed, goes home. Maybe after 2 or 3 years, the person comes down again. Maybe the body rejected the organ completely. Yeah. Has it ever happened in this case? And what did you do? Yes,
you know, I mentioned that kidney transplant, for example, the problem with organ transplant is that whatever you are putting there is an adult cell. It's not something that can produce itself and produce new cells. So if you put a kidney, for example, the kidney is not going to produce another kidney. So it's not something that is multiplying. Okay. And that's the drawback with solid organ transplant. That's why you need to continue to give them drugs for life so that you can keep suppressing the body from rejecting the tissue, the organ that you have transplanted. But the good thing with bone marrow transplant is that you are transplanting something that can produce itself and produce new cells. So that modern hand that I keep mentioning is like a machine, a manufacturing machine that will keep producing. So once it sits down in the bone marrow, and it's fully seated down, and we have stopped all the drugs, from that moment till the person also dies from natural thing, those cells will continue to produce its own kind. So it's like something that has gone into the marrow, sits down, and then once we stop the drug only when we are sure that the mother hen is properly seated. The stem cell.
That means the person has to be going through continuous
so after 1 year,
examination.
Yes, it doesn't take drugs anymore because these cells will now remain permanently and be producing. His blood group will change to that of the donor. His genotype will change to that of the donor. So chance of our having rejection, long-time rejection, is usually lower. But for organ transplant, that's why they continue to use drugs for life. But the good thing about stem cell transplant is that once the stem cell is properly seated, you're going to have full recovery. All
right, let's quickly take this call. Hello, caller. Good afternoon. Hello. 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 All right, do us a favor. Reduce the audio level on your television. Say off your TV, pata, so that you can talk. Hello, good afternoon. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Please reduce the audio level. Switch off your television set if possible. and then ask your neighbor to listen to you. You cannot call us and listen to yourself at the same time. It won't work. Hello, good afternoon. Hello? Hello? All right, the number is 0502290573. Please, first rule, reduce the audio level in your television set or move away from that room. Better still, switch off your television set. Hello, good afternoon. Hello? 0522905573 is the number to call, and the doctor will be here to take your calls. If you call us after the program, you may not be able to reach him, because most people will just call after the program because they don't want their voices heard on television set. Like we'll say in our pidgin parlance, if you hide sick, you will hide die. That is how it is, okay? So let the doctor know. Hello, good afternoon, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name, sir? Hello? All right. So call us again, if you will, on 0522905573. Doctor, what we want to know, how long somebody... Okay, hello? Hello? All right, doctor, one we want to ask this question. A patient who has gone through stem cell transplantation, how long would that patient live? Is that patient going to die eventually from natural cause or as a result of some complications?
Well, I mentioned some of the complications. If the patient doesn't have complication and you have a full engraftment and a new stem cell is producing, so usually the problem about sickle cell is over and the patient lives a normal life. Those we transplanted in 2011, 2012, 2013, they are still alive. And their genotype has changed. Their PCV, I mean their packed cell volume, the blood level, which used to be naturally low, has gone up. Those who are kids who could not play football with their mates, play football with their mates. So they live a normal life. Excepting, as I said, if there are complications from the stem cell transplant. If not, they are supposed to live normal life. And once we stop all the drugs, they are no longer on any drugs, including the usual drugs they take when they were sickle cell. They usually will not take any of those drugs anymore. So just live like you and I, who is hemoglobin AA or hemoglobin AS. So in respect to that, they live a normal life.
Normal life and die from natural cause. Okay, let's look at the issue of donors, because you know we have this belief that if you give, something may just happen to that person. So the donors, do they have problems? Do they develop problems?
Yes, I think that's a very important question, because that has caused a lot of fears. You know, some mothers feel that, oh, you want to sacrifice one
for one
to save the other. It's not actually true. We do not also cut the bone. You know, some people believe that when you hear about bone marrow transplant, that just like the kidney transplant, that maybe you cut the bone, move it from that of the donor and take it to that of the patient. No, we don't. So what we do, as simple as it is that we take the donor to the theater so that a clean place, and then we give some drugs at the spinal cord just to make sure that the lower part of the legs are weak, I mean anesthetized, so they don't have pain. So we put a needle right through the backbone into where the marrow is being produced. And if you are eating the chicken, you have the marrow, the red part inside the bone. So we just put a needle to get into that place, and then we take blood from there. Just as you go to donate blood, so from the bone marrow, if we are collecting from the bone marrow, we just take blood from there. That blood that we are collecting from there contains the mother hen or the stem cells. So when we finish collecting it, we'll leave the donor and take that blood in a bag and go and transfuse it to the patient. The patient is already, the bone marrow has been destroyed, is in a special room. We just take the blood to the patient and then transfuse it like blood.
Okay, like normal transfusion.
Blood transfusion.
Not as if you're
No, we're not putting it into the bone, no. But we have special drugs that will make the stem cells or the mother hen to move from the blood and walk into the bone marrow. Those drugs will direct the stem cells. And then when they get into the bone marrow, they will now sit down there. It's a process called homing. They will now, when they get to the bone marrow, you know where the bone marrow is, those stem cells. Once they get there, they sit there and they begin to produce new cells. So the donor is very safe. We have had a 10, 11, 12 years old boy donate. And once they finish donating, once the anesthesia wears off, they go back to school. Some have come from hostel to donate. And once they donate, they go back to the hostel. So it's to show you that the donor is completely safe. There is no problem with the donor. The donor doesn't have issues. We collect only what is required. Sometimes their PCV or their blood level will drop, just like if you go to donate blood. If your PCV was 35 before, they drop to 30. And then if your PCV was 40 before, it drops to 35 or thereabouts. And then we give you blood medicine. And within a month or two, whatever shortage you have would have come back. So the donors are very safe. And once we explain that to the parents, because some parents are always scared that, oh, maybe you want to sacrifice one. So donor is very safe. There's no problem. As small as I told you, 10, 11 years old has donated. And nothing happened to the child. We don't collect more than we require from the child to do the transplantation. So that is the issue. The donors
there should be no fear, because as Nigerians we exercise a lot of fear.
There's no fear because the donors are very safe. All the donors, all the 9 donors that have donated for us, they're all safe. They don't have problems.
And their siblings. What if an outsider wants to donate?
Now, as I mentioned, the chance of finding a matched sibling donor that is genetically matched from each family is about 20 to 25% chance. That means the same brother and sister, same father, same mother. But if you go outside to cousins, it drops to around maybe 1%. Then if you go to outsiders, it drops further. But what they do in developed country, they have a registry where they do free genetic testing for everybody who are willing to young, and then they do it. And then once they do that, it is stored in a registry or a computer, a data. So when you need a donor, you just put the genetic result of the patient into that registry. And you search millions of donors, and then you find a matched donor among millions that is not related to you, but it has the same genetic mark with you. But in Nigeria, we just don't have that kind of facility.
I was going to ask that question.
We have
is it difficult? Is it out of place?
It is. We had a Nigerian who had blood cancer in the US. Had difficulty in finding a donor. They called us in Nigeria, we didn't have donors. And they had to use cord blood to save the young man's life. Cord blood from that was banked in the bank of some black people. So he finally set up a bone marrow registry in Enugu, in Nigeria. So we have a registry. But the problem is doing the genetic test is expensive. You cannot ask somebody, for example, that you want to do, the person is volunteer to become a donor. You ask him to go and pay maybe 200,000 or thereabouts to do
that
the test.
Is absurd.
It's absurd. But government in developed country has gone extra mile to do this test. So we have like 200 persons there, sponsored by the same person, paid for by the same person. So if government is proactive, we should be able to get young university students, young able-bodied men and women who are volunteers. And then we do the test for them, paid for by somebody. There's no free lunch, even in Freetown. So you have to have somebody paying for it. And then we now have a lot of registry. I mean, donors in the registry, so that you can put anybody that wants to, you get a donor. Until we start having millions of people in that registry will not help anybody.
You know, year in, year out, there's a lot of budget towards the health sector. Yes. You begin to wonder, where does this money go into? Where is it channeled into when there are projects like this to be done?
Well, you know, I'm a scientist, and I'm not...
you're a scientist, you're also a doctor, about this.
So how but worldwide, even the WHO has recommended that every state's budget, every country's budget should have close to 15% of their budget as for health. Yeah. But you know that in Nigeria, most times either 2% or 3%. So to start with, budgeting in Nigeria is still below expected mark for budgeting. Then you're not talking about how the money is being spent on priorities and things like that. As I told you, Nigeria has the highest number of sickle cell in the world. In Brazil, they don't have as much sickle cell patients that we do. But still, Brazil has gone an extra mile to say, okay, those who have sickle cell disease and require transplant, government will pay for them. But even in Nigeria, government is still yet to be able to start what is called free genetic testing, or free, as simple as free hemoglobin genotype testing. Government must be proactive. We cannot transplant our patients. Prevention is better than cure. We want government to start by enacting laws to make sure that everybody gets free hemoglobin testing. And then part of the problem we have always had is that there have been always also wrong results. You have somebody goes to the lab, they tell him it's AS, and the husband is AA. But when they get married, they start having children that is SS. So they have a wrong result. So government must take proactive steps. We may not be able to enact law to say that AS must not marry AS, because that's against human rights. Because there are also medical ways to overcome that. But government can start by making sure that everybody knows their genotype. We did a study in secondary school, girls who are, at the age of deciding whether they want to fall in love or not. And you'll be surprised that up to 60% of them do not know their genotype. So, and once they get into a relationship and they get pregnant, and they now have to get married, by the time they do their genotype, it's already too late. So, but churches are also helping. But when people know their genotype already, it's a weapon. And we always tell young girls, when a man comes to say hello, before he says, I love you, you just jokingly, if you are AS, you must also ask him, what is your genotype? Genotype should be part of his identification. I am Osazuwa so-and-so, genotype AS. Then if he says it's AS, you just know that the relationship is just going to be friendly without. So, but government must be proactive. Pay for HLA typing so that we can have the registry loaded. Pay for free hemoglobin genotype to ensure that every Nigerian knows their genotype, to reduce the amount of children that is brought into Nigeria.
Well, before government becomes that proactive, it boils on the individual to at least take a chance, go do your genotype test so that you will be very sure. But that brings to mind again the issue of quackery in the industry, because from street to street you will find one medical lab there, even a room, a small tiny kiosk, medical lab, and results from such places can be very devastating.
Yes.
Just wondering if something can be done about that.
It's still a reflection of the country, a reflection of the problems in the country where there are no standards and poverty is a big problem. So many, it's just like somebody coming on air and says he has a cure to HIV, or he has one drug that can cure sickle cell. And in developed countries, you can't wake up and do things like that. You understand what I'm saying? There are signboards, even some places where they say they have bone marrow extracts that can help you cure so many diseases. But that's Nigeria. But government must take proactive steps. That's what I mean. Proactive steps means that government must be able to ensure that the right thing is done. The problem with the genotype, I must say, the normal one that is done in most laboratories, is subject to current. I mean, if the current, the power that is passing through the machine is a local method of doing genotype. That method was, if you go to developed country, you only find it in a museum, in a medical museum, where they say, oh, this is what they were using in 1820 something or so. So it's where you pass current from one place to the other, and you put a paper, you put blood spots, and the current flows, and you see the separation. If the current is bad, like you have in Nigeria, fluctuating current, they will separate well. So the man will read you a wrong result. Okay, the chemicals that they are using, if they're also not expired, you will have a wrong result. But there are newer methods of doing it. That's why I said government must be proactive. If you know that it is free to get hemoglobin genotype done in a government hospital with good, genuine results, and it's free, nobody will go and pay to anybody to do tests for them. So that's why I said government must be proactive. There are even newer methods now that you can do on your own. I mean, it's a rapid test. You just take your blood, put it inside, and it will read for you, and it's cheap. That's what an NGO is sponsoring, is working with NDDC, and they are doing free genotype testing in some places like Port Harcourt, will soon come to Benin. But these are proactive measures. Government must be proactive and take sickle cell as a priority to reduce the burden, and those who already have it find a solution to their problem.
All right, Doctor, the program has been quite exciting, and I want to believe that you're getting some knowledge from our discussion. We're looking at stem cell transplantation, a cure for sickle cell anemia. And now you know that sickle cell can actually be cured via this method. But the thing is, it's quite expensive. But you can save towards it if you really want to. You can save towards it, and then you go and make your inquiries. Peradventure, you don't want people to hear your voice on television. You don't want to hear them see you ask questions, okay? So, Doctor, our time is fast spent. I would like you to give us a word or two on this stem cell transplantation. Again, let people begin to have confidence in our doctors here, because some persons will tell you, oh, I'd rather go to this place, I'd rather go to that place. But it is good news to know that this can be done right here in your state, in your city, by your brothers and sisters, It can be done here. All right, so doctor, let's just have that.
Thank you very much. We believe strongly in Nigeria. That's very important. So some of us are die-hard fans of Nigeria. We believe there's hope. And so we've been able to do what we can do on our own part of profession. We've been able to domesticate the method of bone marrow transplant. And that's the unique thing we're doing in Benin City. We are the pioneers of bone marrow transplant in the entire sub-Saharan Africa. Apart from Egypt and South Africa and Tunisia, most other parts of Africa, they don't do bone marrow transplant. And the protocol we have in Nigeria is what we are also beginning to export to other countries. Last week we had a visit from Congo. The Congo ambassador visited Nigeria because they've heard of what we are doing, and we're at the verge of training doctors and establishing bone marrow transplantation program in Congo.
In Congo. The
same with Tanzania. Tanzania will be coming in the next few months. So what we're trying to say is that we have a domesticated method that is also cheap. I still say that it's the cheapest in the world, but I also tell parents that if you compare what you spend in 10, 15 years, and at the chance of also sometimes losing the child, if you put them together, the time some people have lost their job. Yeah. They stay in the hospital all the time. So if you have a very severe sickle cell disease child, then the best thing is look for how to save money to get it done. And then we're also appealing, put a smile. We're asking government, NGOs to put a smile in the face of this group of persons by sponsoring 1 or 2 transplant patients.
I think sometimes people should take a trip to the Sickle Cell Center in Benin, and you'll be so amazed at the suffering these children go to. They didn't ask to be born. So but if you can do something, if you can do just something small for these people to give them some respite, to give them some relief, then you will also be happy. And better still, if you are AS and your partner is AS, please say no to marriage. Because some will say love, love, love. When the crisis begin to happen, you will not remember that you ever said I love you to that person. You will not remember. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about because I've done quite a number of research on this issue. And so, Professor Bazwa Yunusa, consultant hematologist, stem cell transplantologist. Yeah, it's got a long one. Thank you very much for being part of our show today. And I'm so glad you came here. You want to do a follow-up on this topic, or you want to ask doctor questions later, you can call this number 080-599-53122. I call the number again, 080-599-53122. Please use that number to do a follow-up, 080-599-53122, and you'll be glad you did. Thank you very much for watching today's edition of the program. We'll see you again next week. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye-bye.